You laughed at my costume? Let's see who laughs last.
The thing about wearing a pirate costume to your own humiliation is that everyone expects you to be the villain anyway. So when I walked into the Riverside Community Center that Halloween night, complete with eye patch and plastic cutlass, I figured I was already dressed for what was coming. My wife Alicia looked stunning in her black Catwoman outfit. The leather hugged every curve she'd been working on at the gym for the past 6 months. 6 months of, I need to get in shape, Greg, and I'm doing this for me, not you. Right, because nothing says personal empowerment like a skin-tight costume that shows off your rear to every mouth breather in town. Greg, you look ridiculous, she said, not even glancing my way as she adjusted her cat ears in the reflection of a punch bowl. That costume makes you look fat. Thanks, honey. You look great, too. The sarcasm dripped off my words like rum from a pirate's beard, but she was already scanning the room for someone more interesting to talk to. I'm Greg Hunter, 42 years old, manager of Rossetti's Italian restaurant on Main Street. Not glamorous, but it pays the bills and keeps food on the table. Alicia works as a legal clerk at Morrison & Associates, the only law firm in our dying New England town of Millbrook. She makes decent money pushing papers and thinks it makes her better than everyone else, especially me. The community center was packed with the usual suspects. Mrs. Peabody from down the street was dressed as a witch, which required minimal effort since she already had the personality down pat. My buddy Richard showed up as a vampire, complete with plastic fangs that made him lisp. At least someone was committed to looking stupid with me. Greg! Richard waved me over to the refreshment table. Nice costume, Captain Jack Sparrow's unemployed brother. Very funny. Have you seen... I started to ask about Alicia, but I spotted her across the room. She was laughing at something a guy in a Tarzan costume was saying. The guy was built like a brick crap house, all muscles and tan skin, wearing nothing but a loincloth and a cocky grin. Who wears a loincloth in New England in October, idiots and men who want to show off for my wife? That's Dominic Russo, Richard said, following my gaze. He's been working construction on the new shopping center. Word is he's been working on more than just buildings lately. The way Alicia was touching Tarzan's arm made my stomach twist. She had that laugh going, the one she used to reserve for me back when we first met. High-pitched and breathy, like she was the most delighted woman on earth. Now she saved it for everyone except her husband. I need a drink, I muttered. Make it a double, Richard said. This is going to be a long night. I was halfway to the bar when I heard Alicia's voice from behind a partition near the restrooms. She was talking to her best friend Susie, who was dressed as some kind of alluring nurse. Susie had been Alicia's shadow since college, always whispering in her ear, always stirring up drama. He's incredible, Alicia was saying. Did you see those abs? And the way he looks at me like I'm the only woman in the room? What about Greg? Susie asked. Alicia laughed, but not the delighted laugh she'd given Tarzan. This one was cold and dismissive. Greg, please, he's gotten so boring. All he does is complain about the restaurant and watch old boxing matches on TV. When's the last time he made me feel desired? So, what are you going to do? I'm thinking about it. Dominic asked me to meet him for coffee tomorrow. Just coffee, he said. Just coffee, Susie repeated, and they both giggled like teenagers. I felt like someone had punched me in the gut. 20 years of marriage, and my wife was planning to cheat on me with a guy who thought a loincloth was appropriate party attire. I walked back to the main room in a daze. The party swirled around me, all fake laughter and cheap costumes. I watched Alicia flirt with Dominic by the dance floor. She kept touching his chest, running her fingers over those ridiculous muscles while he flexed like a peacock. That's when I decided to have some fun of my own. I slipped outside into the parking lot. October in New England is cold as misery, and I could see my breath in the air. Dominic's truck was easy to spot, a lifted Chevy with truck nuts hanging from the trailer hitch, real classy. I'd learned a few things about cars from my dad before he died. One of them was that sugar in the gas tank was mostly a myth, but there were other ways to make a vehicle very unhappy. I pulled out my pocket knife and let some air out of his tires. Not enough to make them flat, just enough to make the ride home interesting. Then I popped the hood and loosened a few things that should stay tight. Nothing dangerous, just annoying. If Dominic wanted to play games with my wife, he could play some games with his mechanic, too. I was closing the hood when I heard footsteps on the gravel. What the heck are you doing to my truck? I turned around slowly. Dominic was standing there in his ridiculous costume, muscles tensed like he was ready for a fight. Up close, he was even bigger than he looked inside, Probably had 6 inches and 50 pounds on me. Just admiring the workmanship, I said. Nice truck nuts. Really brings out your eyes. You touch my truck, you deal with me. He stepped closer, trying to intimidate me with his size. Relax, Tarzan. I was just looking. Though you might want to check your tire pressure before you drive home. Safety first. His face twisted with anger. But before he could do anything, voices echoed from the community center entrance. A group of people was coming outside, including Alicia and Susie. Everything okay out here? Alicia called out. Your husband was messing with my truck, Dominic said. I was admiring it, I corrected. Beautiful vehicle. Almost as beautiful as your costume. Very authentic. Did you make the loincloth yourself, or did you have to special order it? Some of the people who'd come outside started laughing. Dominic's face turned red, but he couldn't do much with an audience watching. Come on, Greg, Alicia said. Let's go home. In a minute, sweetheart. I'm having such a good time getting to know your new friends. The tension in the parking lot was thick enough to cut with a cutlass. Dominic looked like he wanted to pound me into the gravel, but too many people were watching. Finally, he stalked back toward the building. You're an a-hole, Greg, Alicia hissed as we walked to our car. I'm an a-hole? I'm not the one flirting with Conan the Barbarian all night. I was being friendly. You wouldn't understand. The drive home was silent except for the sound of Alicia texting on her phone, probably telling Susie all about what a jerk her husband was. Or maybe she was texting Dominic directly, apologizing for my behavior. When we got home, Alicia went straight to bed without saying goodnight. I sat in my recliner, still wearing my pirate costume, and thought about what I'd overheard. 20 years of marriage, and it was falling apart because my wife wanted to play jungle games with a construction worker. I was about to turn off the lights when I remembered something. Alicia had left her phone charging in the kitchen. She never left her phone anywhere. She guarded that thing like it contained state secrets. Curiosity ended the cat, but satisfaction brought it back. I picked up the phone and tried her usual password, our anniversary date. It worked. Some things never change, even when everything else is falling apart. The first thing I saw was a group text between Alicia, Susie, and someone named Dom. The messages went back weeks. Photos, flirty texts, plans to meet up. But it wasn't just Alicia and Dominic. The photos showed all three of them together in ways that made my blood run cold. My wife wasn't just planning to cheat on me. She already had been, and she'd brought her best friend along for the ride. The next morning, I woke up on the couch still wearing my pirate costume. The eye patch had left a mark on my face, and my plastic cutlass had somehow ended up stabbed through a throw pillow. Seemed appropriate. Alicia was already gone when I got up. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter saying she had to work late and would grab dinner with Susie. Right. Dinner with Susie and dessert with Dominic, more likely. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table staring at that note. 20 years of marriage, and this is what it had come to. Lies written on post-it notes and secret group chats with construction workers. My phone rang. Richard's name appeared on the screen. How you feeling this morning, Captain? He asked. Like I've been keel-hauled. What's up? You hear about Dominic's truck? Apparently it broke down on Route 9 last night. Had to get it towed. Funny thing is, he swears someone messed with it. I tried to sound surprised. Really? That's terrible. I hope he figures out what happened. Yeah, I'm sure he will. Listen, Sarah and I are having people over for dinner Saturday. You and Alicia should come. Might be good for you two to get out. Richard and his wife Sarah had been our friends for 15 years. They were good people, the kind who still believed marriage was supposed to last forever. I didn't have the heart to tell him that my marriage was currently circling the drain like water in a broken toilet. I'll ask Alicia, I said. Everything okay with you two? You seemed a little tense last night. Just the usual stuff. You know how it is. But Richard didn't know how it was because Richard's wife wasn't sneaking around with a guy who looked like he belonged on the cover of a romance novel. After I hung up, I decided to do some detective work. If Alicia wanted to play games, I needed to know the rules. I drove to the construction site where Dominic worked. It wasn't hard to find him. He was the guy with his shirt off, even though it was 40 degrees outside, showing off for anyone who cared to look. I parked across the street and watched him work. He was operating a jackhammer, and every muscle in his back rippled with the vibration. I had to admit, the guy was built like a Greek statue, a really stupid Greek statue that thought a hard hat was optional. Around noon, I saw a familiar car pull up to the construction site. Alicia's Honda Civic. She got out wearing a dress I'd never seen before, something tight and red that showed off the results of all those gym sessions. Dominic saw her and immediately dropped his tools. They talked for a few minutes, then walked to a food truck parked nearby. Just coffee, my foot. They were standing close together, and I could see Alicia laughing at whatever stupid thing he was saying. Then she did something that made my blood boil. She reached up and wiped sweat off his forehead with a napkin, like he was a prizefighter and she was his corner woman. It was intimate and tender, the kind of gesture a woman makes for a man she cares about. I started my car and drove away before I did something stupid, like march over there and feed Dominic his hard hat. That evening, I went to Murphy's Tavern, the local dive bar where blue-collar guys like me went to drink away their problems. The place was dark and smoky, with a boxing match playing on the TV above the bar. Perfect atmosphere for drowning my sorrows. I was on my third beer when Richard walked in with two other guys I recognized from around town. Tom Bradley, who owned the hardware store, and Mike Santos, who worked at the post office. We'd all been friends for years, the kind of guys who watched football together and complained about our wives in that harmless way married men do. "Greg," Tom called out, "heard you had some excitement at the Halloween party." "Nothing I couldn't handle," I said. "That Dominic guy is bad news," Mike said, sliding onto the bar stool next to me. "My cousin worked with him on a job in Springfield, says he's been with half the married women in that town." "Is that so?" I tried to keep my voice neutral. "Yeah, he's got a thing for other men's wives. Thinks he's God's gift to womankind." Richard shot Mike a look that said, "Shut up," but the damage was done. Now I knew for sure that Dominic was a serial homewrecker and my wife was just his latest conquest. "You okay, Greg?" Richard asked. "You look like someone pissed in your beer." "I'm fine. Just tired." But I wasn't fine. I was angry and humiliated and ready to do something about it. The question was what? Over the next few days, I started paying closer attention to Alicia's routine. She was working late more often, going out with Susie more frequently, and spending a lot of time on her phone. When I tried to talk to her, she was distant and distracted, like I was interrupting something important. Thursday night, she announced she was going to a girls' night at Susie's house. She got dressed up like she was going to a nightclub, not hanging out with her girlfriend eating ice cream and watching romantic comedies. After she left, I decided to take a drive. I knew where Susie lived, a small house on the outskirts of town that she rented after her divorce 2 years ago. When I drove by, I saw Alicia's car in the driveway, but there was also a lifted Chevy truck parked on the street. Dominic's truck, the same one I'd sabotaged at the Halloween party. I parked down the block and walked back. The house was lit up, and I could hear music and laughter coming from inside. I crept around to the back and looked through the kitchen window. What I saw made my stomach turn. Alicia was dancing with Dominic in the living room, grinding against him like they were in some sleazy club. Susie was sitting on the couch with a drink, watching them and laughing. It was like a private party, and I was definitely not invited. I watched for a few more minutes, feeling sick and angry and betrayed. Then Alicia kissed Dominic long and deep, and I couldn't watch anymore. I walked back to my car and drove home, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. When Alicia came home around midnight, she slipped into bed quietly, probably thinking I was asleep. She smelled like beer and cologne. Not her cologne, but something masculine and cheap. "How was girls' night?" I asked in the darkness. She jumped like I'd shot her. "It was fine. We just watched movies and talked." "Sounds fun. What movies did you watch?" There was a pause. "Just some romantic comedy. You wouldn't have liked it." "Probably not. I'm more into action movies. You know, the kind where the good guy gets revenge on the people who betrayed him." Another pause. "Go to sleep, Greg. We both have work tomorrow." But I didn't sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling, planning what I was going to do next. If Alicia wanted to play games, I was ready to play. But we were going to play by my rules. The next day was Friday, and I had the day off from the restaurant. I spent the morning doing research at the town library, using their computers to look up information about my new enemies. What I found was very interesting. Dominic Russo had a record. Nothing serious, just some bar fights and a DUI, but enough to show he was trouble. He'd been married once to a woman named Lisa who'd divorced him after 2 years. The court records were public, and they painted a picture of a man who couldn't keep his hands to himself. Susie was even more interesting. Her real name was Susan Martinez, and she'd been fired from her last job at a law firm in Boston for stealing from client accounts. She'd never been prosecuted, but the civil settlement had cost her everything. That's why she was living in a rental house in Millbrook instead of her fancy condo in the city. So my wife was cheating on me with a criminal, with help from a thief. This kept getting better and better. That evening, Richard called to remind me about the dinner party the next night. Alicia's looking forward to it, I lied. Great. Sarah's making her famous lasagna. Should be a good time. It was going to be a very good time. I was going to make sure of that. Saturday evening arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that makes you think of football games and apple cider. Under normal circumstances, I would have been looking forward to dinner at Richard and Sarah's house. They were good friends, the kind who made you feel welcome and fed you until you couldn't move. But these weren't normal circumstances. Alicia spent an hour getting ready, trying on 3 different outfits before settling on a black dress that hugged her curves. She was putting on makeup like she was going to a photo shoot, not dinner with friends we'd known for 15 years. "You look nice," I said, when she finally emerged from the bathroom. "Thanks." She didn't return the compliment, even though I'd put on my best shirt and actually combed my hair. "We should go. I don't want to be late." The drive to Richard's house was quiet. Alicia spent the whole time checking her phone, typing messages to someone, probably coordinating her next rendezvous with Tarzan and his merry band of homewreckers. Richard and Sarah lived in a colonial house on Maple Street, the kind of neighborhood where people still knew their neighbors and kids rode bikes in the street. Their house always smelled like whatever delicious thing Sarah was cooking, and tonight was no exception. "Greg! Alicia!" Sarah greeted us at the door with hugs and her usual warmth. Come in, come in. Dinner's almost ready." The living room was filled with familiar faces. Tom and his wife Jennifer were there, along with Mike and his girlfriend Lisa. These were our people, the friends we'd shared birthdays and holidays with for years. They all greeted us with smiles and small talk about work and the weather. I was making conversation with Tom about the hardware store when I noticed Alicia had stepped outside to take a phone call. Through the window, I could see her pacing on the porch, talking animatedly to whoever was on the other end. "Everything okay?" Richard asked, following my gaze. "Just work stuff, probably. You know how it is with lawyers." But it wasn't work stuff. When Alicia came back inside, she had that flushed, excited look she got when she was talking to Dominic. She was practically glowing with whatever secret conversation she'd just had. "Sorry about that," she said to the room in general. "Work emergency." Sarah announced that dinner was ready, and we all moved to the dining room. The table was set with Sarah's good china, and the lasagna smelled incredible. Under normal circumstances, this would have been perfect. But as we sat down to eat, I noticed something that made my blood pressure spike. Alicia kept checking her phone under the table, smiling at whatever messages she was receiving. She was being rude to our hosts and disrespectful to everyone at the table, all so she could flirt with her boyfriend. "Alicia," Sarah said gently, "maybe you could put the phone away. We hardly get to see you two anymore." Alicia looked up, startled. "Oh, sorry, it's just this case at work. Very demanding client." "Must be some case," Jennifer said with a knowing look. "You've been on that phone all evening." "It's complicated," Alicia said, but she put the phone in her purse. The conversation moved on to safer topics, the weather, local politics, whose kids were doing what. I participated when I had to, but mostly I watched my wife. She was distracted and fidgety, like she'd rather be anywhere else. Every few minutes, she'd glance at her purse where her phone was buzzing with new messages. "So, Greg," Mike said, cutting into his lasagna, "I heard you had a run-in with that Dominic guy at the Halloween party." The table got quiet. Everyone knew something had happened, but nobody had gotten the full story. "Just a misunderstanding," I said. "Nothing serious." "That guy's trouble," Tom said. "I've heard stories about him from other contractors. He's got a reputation." "What kind of reputation?" Sarah asked. Tom glanced at the wives around the table. "Let's just say he doesn't respect the institution of marriage." Alicia's face went pale, but she tried to play it off. "People love to gossip in this town. Half the stories you hear aren't true." "This isn't gossip," Mike said. "My cousin worked with him. Says Dominic bragged about all the married women he's been with. Thinks it's some kind of game." "That's disgusting," Jennifer said. "What kind of man goes after married women?" "The worst kind," I said, looking directly at Alicia. "The kind who has no respect for other people's relationships." Alicia squirmed in her seat. "Can we talk about something else? This is getting depressing." "I think it's important," Richard said. "Guys like that are poison to a community. They break up families, hurt kids, destroy marriages. Someone should do something about it. Like what? Alicia asked, her voice tight. Run him out of town, Tom suggested. Make it clear he's not welcome here. That's a little extreme, Alicia said quickly. Maybe he's not as bad as people say. Everyone stared at her. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Jennifer looked confused. The men at the table exchanged glances. Are you defending him? Lisa asked. No, I don't think we should judge people based on rumors. They're not rumors, Mike said firmly. My cousin saw it firsthand. This guy is a predator. Alicia's phone buzzed in her purse. She jumped like she'd been electrocuted. Excuse me, she said, standing up abruptly. I need to take this call. She grabbed her purse and rushed outside. Through the window, we could see her pacing the porch again, talking rapidly into her phone. The dining room was dead silent. Is everything okay with you two? Sarah asked gently. I looked around the table at these people who'd been our friends for years. They deserved the truth, but I wasn't ready to give it to them. Not yet. We're going through a rough patch, I said finally. Marriage is hard work, you know. If you need to talk, Richard said. I'm here. We all are. I know. Thanks. Alicia came back inside a few minutes later, but the mood had shifted. Everyone was polite but distant. They could sense something was wrong, even if they didn't know exactly what. We left early, claiming that Alicia had a headache. The drive home was tense and silent. That was embarrassing, Alicia said as we pulled into our driveway. What was embarrassing? The fact that our friends think your boyfriend is a piece of crap? He's not my boyfriend, she snapped. Then what is he? Your fitness trainer? Your life coach? Your boy toy? Go to heck, Greg. I'm already there, sweetheart. You put me there. We went to bed angry, sleeping on opposite sides of our king-size mattress like we were on different continents. I lay awake listening to Alicia text someone until almost 2 a.m. The soft clicking of her phone keys was like water torture, each message another nail in the coffin of our marriage. Sunday morning, I woke up to find a note on Alicia's pillow. She'd gone to help Susie with some project and wouldn't be back until evening. Another lie, wrapped up in a convenient excuse. I spent the day planning my next move. If Alicia wanted to humiliate me in front of our friends, I was going to return the favor. But I was going to do it right. That evening, I drove to Murphy's Tavern. Sunday nights were usually quiet, but I knew I'd find at least a few familiar faces. Sure enough, Tom and Mike were there, nursing beers and watching a football game. Greg, Tom called out. How's Alicia feeling? Better, I hope. She's fine, just needed some rest. I ordered a beer and joined them at the bar. We made small talk about the game for a while, but eventually the conversation turned to the previous night's dinner. That was weird, Mike said. Alicia defending that Dominic guy, what's that about? I think she just doesn't like gossip, I said carefully. It wasn't gossip, though. My cousin was dead serious. This guy is bad news. Tom nodded. I've been asking around. Turns out he's got a pattern. He targets married women, especially ones who are having problems at home. He's like a vulture, circling around damaged relationships. How do you know all this? I asked. My brother-in-law is a cop in Springfield. Says they had to run Dominic out of town after he broke up 3 marriages in 6 months. The husbands were ready to end him. This was news to me. Dominic wasn't just a casual homewrecker. He was a professional one. Someone should warn the wives in this town, Mike said. Let them know what they're dealing with. Maybe, I said. But you know how women are. They might not believe it until it's too late. Yeah, they always think they're different, that they're special. I finished my beer and headed home, my mind racing with possibilities. If Dominic had done this before, there might be other women he'd hurt, other husbands he'd betrayed. Maybe I wasn't as alone as I thought. When I got home, Alicia was already there, sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open. She looked up when I walked in, and for a moment I saw something in her eyes that might have been guilt. How was your day? I asked. Fine, Susie needed help moving some furniture. That's nice of you. How is Susie these days? She's good. Why? Just curious, I don't see much of her anymore. She's been busy with work. Another lie. Susie had been fired from her job at the law firm 2 weeks ago. I'd found out through a friend of a friend who worked there. Apparently, she'd been caught accessing files she wasn't supposed to see. Well, tell her I said hi. I said, I will. I went to bed that night with a plan forming in my mind. If Alicia wanted to play games, I was ready to play. But the game was about to change, and I was going to be the one making the rules. Monday morning, I called in sick to work. I've been managing Rossetti's for 8 years and had plenty of sick days saved up. Today, I was going to put them to good use. My first stop was the Springfield Police Department. I'd looked up the address online and made the drive in about an hour. The desk sergeant was a friendly guy named O'Brien who looked like he'd seen everything twice. "I'm looking for information about a guy named Dominic Russo," I told him. "I heard he had some trouble here a few months back." O'Brien's expression darkened. "What's your interest in Russo?" "He's working construction in my town. There are rumors about him, and I want to know if they're true." "What kind of rumors?" "That he goes after married women, breaks up families." O'Brien leaned back in his chair. "Let me guess. Your wife's been acting strange lately?" I nodded. "Crap. I'm sorry, man. Yeah, Russo is bad news. We had 3 domestic disturbance calls because of him. Husbands ready to beat the heck out of him, wives defending him like he was some kind of a saint. It was a mess." "What happened to him?" "Nothing official, but word got around about what he was doing. His boss fired him, his landlord evicted him, and the husbands in town made it clear he wasn't welcome. He left on his own before things got really ugly. And now he's in my town doing the same thing." "Looks like it. You want some advice?" "Sure. Don't do anything stupid. I know you're angry. Heck, I'd be angry too. But violence isn't the answer. It'll just make things worse for you." "What do you suggest?" "Gather evidence. Document everything. If you're headed for divorce court, you'll need proof of the affair. And if Russo is up to his old tricks, other people in town should know about it." I thanked O'Brien and drove home, my mind churning with possibilities. The sergeant was right. I needed evidence. But I also needed allies. That afternoon, I made some phone calls. I started with the 3 men whose marriages Dominic had destroyed in Springfield. It took some detective work to track them down, but eventually I found them. The first guy, Steve Morrison, was bitter but helpful. "That bastard ruined my life," he said. 22 years of marriage, gone because my wife thought she was in love with some muscle-bound moron. She left me for him, and then he dumped her 2 months later. Now she wants to come back, but it's too late. "How did he do it?" I asked. "Started small. Compliments, little gifts, making her feel special. He told her she was too good for me, that she deserved better. By the time I figured out what was happening, it was over." The second guy, Paul Chen, had a similar story. "He's like a predator," Paul said. "He can smell a troubled marriage from a mile away. My wife and I were having problems, and he swooped in like a vulture, told her everything she wanted to hear, made her feel like a teenager again." "Did you try to fight for your marriage?" "Of course I did, but she was completely under his spell. She moved out, filed for divorce, the whole thing. Then he moved on to his next victim, and she realized what a fool she'd been. But by then, it was too late for us." The third guy, Mark Rodriguez, was the angriest. "I wanted to end him," Mark said bluntly. "I mean literally end him. I bought a tool and everything. My brother talked me out of it, thank God, but I came close." "What stopped you?" "My kids. They'd already lost their mother to that piece of crap. I couldn't let them lose their father, too." By the time I finished the calls, I had a clear picture of Dominic's methods. He was systematic and ruthless, targeting vulnerable women and destroying families without a second thought. And now he had his sights set on my wife. That evening, I decided to do some surveillance. I knew Alicia was working late, or at least that's what she'd told me. I drove to her office building and waited in the parking lot. Sure enough, at 6:30, she came out of the building with Susie. They got into Alicia's car and drove toward the other side of town. I followed at a distance, staying far enough back to avoid detection. They pulled into the parking lot of a chain restaurant called Applebee's. I parked across the street and watched through binoculars I'd borrowed from Richard's garage. Alicia and Susie went inside and took a booth near the window. A few minutes later, Dominic showed up. He was wearing jeans and a tight t-shirt that showed off his muscles, and he had that cocky swagger that made me want to punch him in the face. I watched them for an hour. It was like dinner theater, except the show was my marriage falling apart in real time. Alicia was animated and flirty, touching Dominic's arm and laughing at everything he said. Susie played the role of wingwoman, encouraging the interaction and running interference. At one point, Dominic got up to use the restroom. I saw my chance and quickly walked into the restaurant, pretending to be waiting for a table. I positioned myself near their booth, close enough to hear their conversation. "He's amazing," Alicia was saying. "I feel like a completely different person when I'm with him." "What about Greg?" Susie asked. "What about him? He's been checking out of our marriage for years. All he cares about is that stupid restaurant and his boxing matches. When's the last time he made me feel beautiful?" So what's the plan? I'm thinking about asking for a separation. Maybe if Greg realizes what he's losing, he'll fight for me. And if he doesn't, Alicia shrugged. Then I'll know where I stand. Dominic came back to the table, and I quickly returned to my car. I'd heard enough. My wife wasn't just having an affair, she was planning to leave me for her boyfriend. The drive home was a blur of anger and hurt. 20 years of marriage, and this is how it ended. Not with a fight or a gradual drift apart, but with my wife falling for some smooth-talking construction worker who collected married women like trophies. When I got home, I sat in my recliner and tried to think clearly. I could confront Alicia, but what would that accomplish? She'd just deny everything and get better at hiding the affair. I could file for divorce, but in this state, adultery didn't matter much in the settlement. She'd still get half of everything. Or I could fight back. The idea came to me slowly, like a sunrise. If Dominic wanted to play games, I'd give him a game. But it wouldn't be the game he expected. I spent the rest of the evening making plans. By the time Alicia came home at 11:30, claiming she'd been working late on a difficult case, I knew exactly what I was going to do. "How was work?" I asked, not looking up from the TV. "Exhausting. This case is really complex." "I'm sure it is. Must be hard to concentrate with all those distractions." She gave me a sharp look. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just that law can be very demanding." "Yes, it can be." She went to bed without another word. I stayed up until 2 a.m. researching and planning. If Alicia wanted a war, she was going to get one. But it was going to be fought on my terms, not hers. Tuesday morning, I put my plan into action. I started by calling my lawyer, a guy named Frank Kellerman, who'd handled some business issues for the restaurant. Frank was old school, the kind of attorney who still wore suspenders and kept a bottle of bourbon in his desk drawer. "Greg, good to hear from you. What can I do for you?" "I need advice about divorce proceedings. Hypothetically speaking." There was a pause. "I see. Problems at home?" "You could say that. If someone were to file for divorce in this state, how would adultery affect the settlement?" "Honestly, not much. Massachusetts is a no-fault state. Unless there's financial misconduct or misuse, the courts usually split things down the middle." "What about custody?" "That's different. If you can prove the other parent is unfit or putting the children at risk, that could matter. But simple adultery? Not so much." I thanked Frank and hung up, disappointed but not surprised. The legal system wasn't going to help me. I'd have to find another way. My next call was to a private investigator I'd found online. His name was Danny Walsh, and his website promised discreet professional surveillance services. He sounded like exactly what I needed. "I need someone followed," I told him when he answered the phone. "Cheating spouse?" "Among other things. How much do you charge?" "Depends on what you need. Basic surveillance is $200 a day plus expenses. If you want photos and video, it's $300. I want everything. Photos, video, audio if possible. I need enough evidence to bury them." "Them?" "My wife, her boyfriend, and her best friend. It's complicated." "It always is. When do you want to start?" "Today." I met Danny at a coffee shop downtown. He was a thin, nervous-looking guy in his 50s who looked like he'd been a cop once upon a time. He had the kind of face that blended into crowds, which I figured was probably useful in his line of work. "Tell me about the targets," he said, pulling out a notebook. I gave him photos and descriptions of Alicia, Dominic, and Susie, along with their addresses and work schedules. I also told him about the Applebee's meetings in Susie's house. "This is pretty comprehensive," Danny said, looking over my notes. "You've been doing your homework. I'm motivated. I can see that. One question. What's your end game here? What do you want to accomplish?" "I want to destroy them, all of them. I want them to lose everything, just like they're trying to do to me." Danny raised an eyebrow. "That's a dangerous mindset. Revenge can backfire if you're not careful." "I'm willing to take that risk." "Okay, it's your money. I'll start surveillance today and have a report for you by Friday." That afternoon, I went to work at the restaurant. It felt good to focus on something normal for a few hours. The lunch rush was busy, and dealing with customers and staff kept my mind off my personal problems. But around 3 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Danny. "Got something interesting. Check your email." I stepped into the office and opened my laptop. Danny had sent me 3 photos taken outside Susie's house. The first showed Alicia's car in the driveway. The second showed Dominic's truck parked on the street. The third showed all 3 of them on the front porch, with Dominic's arms around both women. The timestamp showed the photos were taken at 2:15 p.m. While I was at work, thinking my wife was at her job, She was actually playing house with her boyfriend and her best friend. I stared at the photos for a long time, feeling something cold and hard settle in my chest. This wasn't just an affair anymore. This was a betrayal so complete and calculated that it took my breath away. My phone rang. It was Danny. "You see the photos?" "Yeah. How long have they been there?" "Your wife showed up around noon. The boyfriend arrived about 30 minutes later. They're still inside." "What are they doing?" "I can't see inside the house, but based on the body language in those porch photos, I'd say they're pretty comfortable together. This isn't their first rodeo. Keep watching. I want to know everything." I spent the rest of the afternoon in a fog. I went through the motions of managing the restaurant, but my mind was elsewhere. Every time I thought about those photos, I felt a surge of anger so intense it scared me. That evening, Alicia came home around 7 p.m., claiming she'd been at work all day. "How was your day?" she asked, kissing my cheek like nothing had happened. "Fine. How was yours?" "Busy. We're swamped with this new case. Must be exhausting, working so hard." "It is. I'm thinking about taking a vacation when this is over. Maybe a girls' trip with Susie." "That sounds nice. Where are you thinking of going?" "Maybe the Caribbean, somewhere warm and relaxing." I nodded, like this was a perfectly normal conversation, like my wife wasn't planning a romantic getaway with her boyfriend and her accomplice. "That sounds expensive," I said. "We can afford it. Besides, I deserve a break." "You certainly do." After dinner, Alicia went to take a shower. While she was upstairs, I checked the credit card statements online. Sure enough, there were charges I didn't recognize. Restaurants I'd never been to, a hotel room in Springfield, lingerie from Victoria's Secret. She was spending our money on her affair, and she didn't even care if I found out. My phone buzzed with another text from Danny. "They're on the move, heading to Murphy's Tavern." Murphy's Tavern? The bar where I went to drink with my friends? They were invading my space now, taking over the places that were supposed to be mine. I told Alicia I was going out for a while and drove to Murphy's. I parked across the street and watched through the window. Alicia, Dominic, and Susie were at a corner table, drinking and laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. As I watched, Dominic got up and walked to the bar. I saw my chance and quickly entered through the back door, which led to the restrooms. I positioned myself in the hallway where I could hear their conversation. "Greg's been acting weird lately," Alicia was saying. "I think he suspects something." "So what if he does?" Susie replied. "What's he going to do about it?" "I don't know. He's not usually the confrontational type, but he's been asking a lot of questions." "Maybe it's time to make a move," Susie suggested. "File for separation. Get the ball rolling." "I'm not ready for that yet. I need to make sure I get what I deserve in the settlement." "What do you mean?" "Greg thinks he's so smart, but he doesn't know about the money I've been moving around. By the time this is over, I'll have enough to start fresh." My blood ran cold. She was stealing from me, moving money I didn't know about. This wasn't just adultery, it was theft. Dominic returned to the table and I slipped out the back door before they could see me. I sat in my car for a long time trying to process what I'd heard. My wife wasn't just cheating on me. She was planning to rob me blind. That's when I decided to stop playing defense and go on the attack. The next morning, I called in sick again and drove to the bank. I asked to speak with the manager, a woman named Carol Peterson, who'd handled our accounts for years. "I need to know about any accounts my wife might have opened recently," I told her. Carol looked uncomfortable. "Greg, I can't give you information about Alicia's personal accounts without her permission." "What if I think she's stealing from me?" "Then you need to talk to a lawyer or the police. I'm sorry, but my hands are tied." I left the bank frustrated but not defeated. If I couldn't get the information legally, I'd have to find another way. That afternoon, I met with Danny again. He had more photos and a detailed report of Alicia's activities over the past 3 days. "She's been at the house on Elm Street every day," he said. "Usually arrives around noon, stays until 5 or 6. The boyfriend shows up about an hour after she does." "What about Susie? She's there most of the time, too. Seems like she's facilitating the whole thing." "I need you to dig deeper. I want to know about bank accounts, credit cards, anything financial. I think my wife is stealing from me." "That's going to cost extra. Financial investigations are more complicated. I don't care what it costs. I want everything." Danny nodded. "I'll see what I can find, but Greg, you need to be careful. If you're right about the financial stuff, this could get ugly fast." "It's already ugly. I'm just trying to level the playing field." That evening, I sat in my recliner and planned my next move. Alicia thought she was so smart, playing her little games and stealing my money, but she'd underestimated me. I might be just a restaurant manager from a small town, but I wasn't stupid, and I was done being the victim. Friday morning brought the evidence I'd been waiting for. Danny called at 7 a.m., his voice tight with excitement. "I've got what you need," he said. "Can you meet me at the coffee shop in an hour?" I was there in 30 minutes. Danny was already waiting with a thick manila envelope and a laptop bag. "Your wife's been busy," he said, sliding the envelope across the table. "She's opened 3 new accounts at different banks, all in her name only. She's been moving money from your joint accounts in small amounts over the past 6 months." I opened the envelope and found bank statements, photographs, and a detailed timeline of financial transactions. The numbers made my head spin. "She's stolen almost $40,000, I said, staring at the papers. "That's just what I could track. There might be more. She's also been using credit cards you probably don't know about. Look at this." Danny opened his laptop and showed me credit card statements. Expensive dinners, hotel rooms, jewelry, clothes, all charged to cards in both our names, but used for her affair. "The good news is this gives you leverage," Danny said. "Financial misconduct during a marriage is serious business. A judge won't look kindly on this. What about the affair itself? Do you have proof?" Danny smiled and pulled out a USB drive. "Video, audio, photographs. Enough to make a documentary. Your wife and her friends haven't been very careful." I plugged the USB drive into his laptop and watched my marriage die in high definition. There were videos of Alicia and Dominic at restaurants, kissing in parking lots, entering hotel rooms together. There was audio of her talking to Susie about how stupid I was, how easy it had been to fool me. The worst part was a video taken through Susie's kitchen window. It showed all 3 of them in the living room drinking wine and laughing. At one point, Alicia raised her glass in a toast. "To Greg," she said, her voice clear on the recording. "The dumbest husband in Massachusetts." They all laughed and clinked glasses. I closed the laptop and sat back in my chair, feeling numb. The woman I'd loved for 20 years thought I was a joke. She was stealing from me, cheating on me, and mocking me, all with the help of people I'd trusted. "What do you want to do with this?" Danny asked. "I want to destroy them, all of them." "Be careful, Greg. Revenge is a dish best served cold, but it can also poison the cook. I'm already poisoned. They did that to me." I paid Danny his fee and drove home with the evidence. Alicia was at work, or at least that's where she was supposed to be. I used the time to make copies of everything and store them in a safe deposit box at a different bank. Then I called Frank Kellerman. "I need to file for divorce," I told him, "and I need to do it right." "What's changed since we last talked?" "I have evidence. Lots of it." I spent 2 hours in Frank's office going through the evidence Danny had collected. Frank's expression grew more serious as he reviewed each document and video. "This is significant," he said finally. "The financial misconduct alone could affect the settlement. And if we can prove she was using marital assets to fund the affair, that's even better. What about custody? Do you have children?" I realized I'd been so focused on the betrayal that I'd forgotten we didn't have kids. It was one of the regrets of our marriage. Alicia had never wanted children, always saying we'd have them someday. "No children," I said. "Then custody isn't an issue, but the financial stuff is huge. I can file papers on Monday and have her served by Tuesday. What about freezing the accounts? I can request a temporary restraining order to prevent her from moving any more money. Given this evidence, I think we'll get it." I left Frank's office feeling better than I had in weeks. The legal wheels were in motion, but I wasn't done yet. Alicia had humiliated me in front of our friends and stolen from me for months. She deserved more than just a divorce. She deserved to lose everything. That evening, I put the next phase of my plan into action. I started with social media. I created a fake Facebook account and began posting the photos Danny had taken, not the explicit ones. I wasn't trying to be cruel, but the ones that clearly showed Alicia and Dominic together in romantic situations. I tagged mutual friends and local businesses, making sure the photos would spread quickly through our small town's gossip network. Then I sent anonymous emails to Alicia's boss at the law firm, attaching the evidence of her financial misconduct and explaining how she'd been using work time to conduct her affair. I also sent copies to the construction company where Dominic worked, along with his criminal history from Springfield. Finally, I called the 3 men whose marriages Dominic had destroyed and gave them his current address and phone number. "He's doing it again," I told each of them. "Same pattern, same methods. I thought you'd want to know." By Saturday morning, the wheels were turning. My phone started ringing early with calls from friends who'd seen the Facebook posts. "Greg, is this real?" Richard asked. "These photos of Alicia and some guy? They're real." "Jesus Christ, I'm sorry, man. I had no idea." Nobody did. She was very careful. "What are you going to do?" "I'm handling it." Similar calls came from Tom, Mike, and others. Word was spreading fast through our social circle. By noon, everyone in town would know that Alicia Hunter was cheating on her husband with a construction worker. Around 2 p.m., my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. "Is this Greg Hunter?" The voice was angry and unfamiliar. "Who's asking?" "This is Steve Morrison from Springfield. You called me about Dominic Russo." Steve Morrison, one of the men whose marriage Dominic had destroyed. "What can I do for you, Steve?" "I'm in Millbrook right now looking for that bastard. Me and a couple other guys want to have a conversation with him." "I don't know where he is." "That's okay. We found his truck. We're going to wait." The line went dead. I felt a moment of panic. I'd wanted to cause trouble for Dominic, but I hadn't intended for it to get violent. Then I remembered the video of Alicia toasting my stupidity, and the panic faded. Dominic had made his choices. Now he'd have to live with the consequences. My phone rang again. This time it was Alicia, and she was crying. "Greg, what have you done?" "I don't know what you mean." "The photos. They're all over Facebook. Everyone's calling me asking questions. My boss wants to see me first thing Monday morning." "That's unfortunate." "You bastard! You're trying to destroy my life!" "I'm not trying to do anything. I'm succeeding." "This isn't over, Greg. I'll fight you. I'll take everything you have." "Good luck with that. You might want to check your bank accounts first." There was silence on the other end of the line. "What did you do?" "I protected my assets. Something I should have done months ago." "You can't do this to me." "I already did." "Oh, and Alicia, you might want to call Dominic. I hear he's having some trouble with some old friends." I hung up and turned off my phone. For the first time in months, I felt peace. Sunday was quiet. I spent the day at home, reading and watching old movies. I didn't answer the door when Alicia came by, pounding and screaming on the front porch. I didn't respond to the dozens of text messages she sent, alternating between threats and pleas. Monday morning, Frank called with good news. The restraining order was approved. All joint accounts are frozen, and she can't touch any marital assets until the divorce is finalized. What about her reaction? She hired a lawyer, but he's not very good. I don't think she can afford anyone better, especially with her accounts frozen. And the criminal charges? The district attorney is reviewing the evidence of financial misconduct. They might file charges, but that's out of our hands. Tuesday brought more good news. Danny called to tell me that Dominic had been arrested after a fight with the men from Springfield. He wasn't seriously hurt, but he'd been charged with assault, and his boss had fired him. Susie had been fired from her job at the law firm after they investigated her role in Alicia's schemes. Apparently, she'd been helping Alicia access confidential financial information about our assets. By Wednesday, all three of them were facing serious consequences. Dominic was looking at jail time and had no job. Susie was unemployed and facing potential criminal charges. Alicia was suspended from work pending an investigation and had no access to money. I, on the other hand, was doing fine. Better than fine, actually. With the stolen money recovered and the joint accounts frozen, I had more cash than I'd had in months. The restaurant was doing well, my friends were supportive, and I was sleeping better than I had in years. Thursday evening, I was at Murphy's Tavern with Richard and the guys when Alicia walked in. She looked terrible. Her hair was unwashed, her clothes were wrinkled, and she had dark circles under her eyes. She walked straight to our table, ignoring the stares and whispers from other patrons. "We need to talk," she said. "I don't think we do," I replied, not looking up from my beer. "Please, Greg. I made a mistake. I can fix this. The only mistake you made was getting caught. I love you. I never stopped loving you." I finally looked at her. "You have a funny way of showing it." I was confused. Dominic made me feel things I hadn't felt in years, but it's over now. I want to come home. "Home? You mean the house you were planning to take in the divorce? The one you were going to buy with the money you stole from me?" Her face crumpled. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "You're sorry you got caught. There's a difference. What do you want from me? What can I do to fix this?" I stood up and looked down at her, the woman who'd been my wife for 20 years, who'd betrayed me in every way possible, who'd mocked me and stolen from me and planned to destroy me. "You can't fix this, Alicia. You broke it beyond repair. You wanted a villain? Congratulations. You built one." I walked out of the bar, leaving her standing there with tears streaming down her face. Behind me, I could hear the whispers and murmurs of people who'd once respected her, who now knew exactly what kind of person she really was. Outside, the October air was crisp and clean. I got in my car and drove home to the house that was now mine alone, to the life I was rebuilding from the ashes of my marriage. Alicia had wanted to destroy me, but she'd only made me stronger. She'd wanted to humiliate me, but she'd only humiliated herself. She'd wanted to take everything from me, but she'd lost everything instead. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks later. Alicia got nothing. The evidence of her financial misconduct and adultery convinced the judge that she deserved no part of our marital assets. She moved back in with her parents and took a job as a waitress at a diner outside of town. Dominic served 90 days in jail and left Massachusetts when he got out. Word was he'd moved to Florida, where hopefully the husbands were more forgiving than they were in New England. Susie faced criminal charges for her role in the financial fraud. She plea bargained down to probation and community service, but her legal career was over. She moved away shortly after the trial, and nobody seemed to know or care where she'd gone. As for me, I kept the restaurant, kept the house, and kept my dignity. I'd learned that I was stronger than I thought, smarter than people gave me credit for, and more ruthless than anyone had imagined. The best revenge, they say, is living well. But sometimes, the best revenge is simply making sure the people who tried to destroy you get exactly what they deserve.